Hello and welcome. This is a channel where we talk everything Camino. I'm your host, Camino Candace, and I'm eternally Camino dreaming. So this is my story of how I got to Camino. I'm an osteopathic practitioner by day, and back in 2012, I was in with a patient and we were just talking about some of the crazy ideas for things, that I wanted to do. And with my life. And she said, well, what about the Camino? And I was like, what's that? So she told me, and instantly I was like, yes. All I knew is that it was some sort of pilgrimage that you walked like a bajillion miles and crazy magical things happened. It's life-changing. That's all I needed to know. I was instantly hooked. And that was when it really kind of seeded and sprouted in my mind. However, life and the Camino had other plans, because if you've gone on a Camino, or if you're currently actively planning yours right now, or even if you've had to put yours off, you'll know that the Camino calls you to it, and it'll make sure you get there when you're meant to be there and not a day or a year too soon. So between 2012 and 2023, it took me that long to actually set foot on Camino. And it all started on my birthday in 2022. I was in bed meditating, as I do every morning. And it was such a beautiful fall day. And I just heard this voice, and it was like, it's time. And I was like, oh, time for what? And I heard it again, and it said, it's time. And I was like, oh, okay, like what? To eat cake for breakfast or something? I don't know, I'm thinking it's my birthday. It's time to do some birthday thing. And the answer was no, it's time to do the Camino. And I was like, what? And I was like, when? And that little voice, it said, next September 2023. And I was like, what? Like, can I actually do that? And it repeated itself. And again, I asked, are you sure? Like, am I going to be capable of it? And it said yes. And the reason I kept asking if I was going to be capable of it is because in 2018, I was diagnosed with severe ulcerative colitis, like so bad that one of the options they offered was to remove my entire large intestine. To which I said, no, I'm going to keep all of my body parts, thank you, and questioned their education as a doctor, because I was like, you do know the importance of a large intestine, right? And what I need that for. So no, thank you. We need a better option. So it took probably a good 4 years before I had actually fully recovered. And so this birthday was like 6 months after getting back my testing from my GI doctor that gave me a completely clear of a flare for the first time in 4 years. And so I was terrified, because all I'd known was a colitis flare for 4 years at that point. And the only thing that had really changed it was daily meditation, which is why I was meditating that day. Anyways, so I immediately started, after I heard this voice, I immediately started looking into, okay, what did I need to do? I have a full year to prepare for this. What am I going to need? And over the year, I was able to, save up what I needed for my expenses back home, my expenses for my business, because I'm a solo business owner. And, if I'm not working, there's no income coming in. So essentially, I'm saving my living expenses and my business expenses to keep paying for the space that I had. There were some other ways I could have done it, yet they were not something I wanted to entertain at that time. So it took a year, and that included buying like all of the equipment that I needed, my backpack, my shoes, my hiking poles, and then kind of really planning the items that went into my backpack, which came out to about 22 pounds. So that's about 10 kilos for those of you not in North America. And, for me, it was perfect. I know there's a lot of comparisons that go on. Well, how heavy is your backpack? Oh, if it's more than 6 kilo, 7 kilo, 5 kilo, that's like too heavy. And yet, there's that metaphor on the Camino that whatever we carry in our pack, it's our burden to carry. And the question is, can you actually carry it? Can you actually carry it? And one of my Camino hermanos who I met on Camino, he is hilarious. He had the biggest fucking backpack I have ever seen. And he and I are about like the same weight. And I remember that he got ahead of me a couple days, and then I got a text message and he's like, I shipped home over 5 kilos of stuff back to the US because it was just too much. And he kept like offloading the whole way. And, was that a lot? Yeah, it was a lot. And his backpack was still heavier than mine in the end. And one, it didn't matter because, well, one, it wasn't me carrying his backpack. But two, he had brought what he thought he was going to need. And then there are things that are different between us pilgrims that I'm going to need that you're not, that you're going to need that I don't need, right? I have to bring contact lenses, contact solution in the case, my glasses, that right there is probably a pound and a half. And for those of you who haven't done Camino just yet, and you're like, what's only a pound and a half? Yeah, a pound and a half can make or break you, depending on the day, depending on the train. So just keep that in mind. So it took me a full year to really fine tune my backpack, and I was very happy with it. And at a later date, I'll go through exactly what I had in my pack and why, that sort of thing. So it took me 11 and a half years to set foot on the Camino. It was everything and more. Shit went down and amazing things also happened. And at the end, in Santiago, I got to see the Bomb Fumario in action. And this is a huge fucking deal because in 2020, I guess it was like shut down. I guess it used to swing quite regularly for Pilgrim's Mass. And then because of, all those things that happened globally, they stopped swinging it, and now it runs, if you're willing to pay some ridiculous price of like 500 euros, if it's outside of designated holidays, like St. James's birthday. I think November 1st or 2nd is like All Saints Day. So it runs then. At any rate, when I got to Santiago, there was like, at least that week, it seemed like every mass, someone had at least paid for the Bomb Fumario. And I got to be front row. And I swear to God, I could have reached out and touched it. And I was just blessed with all this like holy frankincense or whatever they put in there. And it was such a magical, emotional moment. It was such an amazing way to close my Camino that like I can like even just feel it now, and I'm like getting goosebumps. And when I walked into the church, there was like the whole altar, and then so if I'm looking at the screen, that would be the altar, and then there's benches facing, and then off to the right and to the left. So I looked at the Bomb Fumario, and this is how my brain works. I'm like, okay, and I literally looked up to see like the mechanism. Which direction is it going to swing? And so I saw I was going to swing left to right if I was facing the altar. And I was like, well, fuck this. I want to be like as close as possible. And so I walked around to the left side because the front row was still empty. And I sat in the aisle, the middle aisle. And when that thing swung by, I could feel the breeze in my hair. And it was just such a blessing to be there that I knew I had made the right decision. And on that Camino, my entire life changed. Like my life has never been the same since, and it never will be. It is part of like my blood. It is part of my body, my being, my soul. There were so many magical things that happened that I can't even explain. And I'll get into them at another time. And they'll be hard to believe, I'm sure, depending on the type of person you are. But there's magic, like literal magic, literal miracles along the way. And my second Camino this past January, I like to call my unexpected Camino, the Camino that the universe planned for me. So that one came about essentially, kind of a long story short. On the first Camino, I had met someone who lived in Europe, and we decided, okay, we're going to make this happen. And anyways, in the end, it did not work out, which is okay. It's actually turned out to be like one of the biggest blessings for me because of how my life has been since then. And yet the ironic part is I had been booking my plane ticket to go see him last summer in 2024. And when I went to payment, it wouldn't go. Like, when I say it wouldn't go through, it's not that the card payment was declined. It was just like there was an error with the system. And I tried a couple times, and I was like, this might be a sign. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it one more time. And if it doesn't go through, then I'll deal with it another time. And it went through. So I was like, okay, great. And at this moment in time, we had been in a bit of an argument. Well, quite an argument, shall we say. And I'm not even kidding you. I put my phone down to put my shoes on to go to work. And he texted me, I don't think this is going to work. Let's talk when I get back from this weekend away. He's going away for a friend's birthday. So I was like, okay. So what I didn't know, and this is your first logistic tip, if you book a flight, within the first 24 hours, no matter what type of ticket it is, you can cancel it without charge and they will refund your money. I didn't know this. Anyways, a few days later, yes, we had video chat and broke up. Okay, so now I've got this ticket and I just left it until I could deal with it. And I called the airline and I was like, can I get my money back? They're like, well, no, it's non-refundable. And I just started crying unintentionally. And this poor guy on the phone, I remember his name, Alex. He was probably in his late 20s, how he sounded. And I said, like, I need the money back from this ticket. This is what happened. And he's like, I'm really sorry. And he's like, but you can change your flight. And I was like, what? And I could hear the panic in his voice. He is so funny. And he's like, yeah, you can change your flight. And I started crying. I'm like, you're going to make me fly to Amsterdam? Because that was where I was supposed to be going. And he's like, no. He's like, you can fly wherever our airline takes you. You just have to complete your travel by such and such date in 2025. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, does that help you feel better? And so I asked him a few more questions, like, could I do it on the app? And he's like, yeah, otherwise you can call in. And I was like, okay, let me figure it out. I'll call back. It didn't let me do it on the app, but I called back and it all got sorted out. And I decided I wanted to go to Lisbon because I had already been thinking about my next full Camino. And I was like, I'm going to go to Lisbon after that one. And so since I didn't know when the next full Camino was going to be, I was like, well, let's just go to Lisbon now. I feel like I'm supposed to be there. And so I booked my flight, not thinking anything of it. I'm going to go for just over 2 weeks. And everyone's like, why are you going to Lisbon? And I was like, because I want to go to Lisbon. And they're like, what are you going to do there? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to go and I'm going to go find out. I just know I'm supposed to be there. So this was like May of 2024. And, because this relationship ended, my mom's like, hey, why don't you and I go on this mother-daughter trip? Yes, I know this is a convoluted story, but hang in there. And I said, sure. So me and her ended up going to Europe for 3 weeks that fall. We spent about 2.5 weeks in Italy, followed by a couple days in London. in October to beginning of November. It was amazing. I got to see some Camino friends who live in the south of England who came up to London for a day to see me. Hi, Nicole and Jez. Mwah, love you guys. Miss you so much. I'll tell you more about them later on. They were the first friends I made on my Camino in 2023. And anyways, it was about a week before she and I left, and I was doing my daily meditation, reading my Course in Miracles and doing my meditation on that. And suddenly, you know, Mother Mary came to me and she's like, you need to come see me. And I was like, yeah, okay, you know, I'll come see you. So I was thinking like Lourdes, right? And then she's like, no, you need to come see me. And I was like, okay. And I was like, sure. So I leave for work that day and I step out of my apartment building and suddenly it's like, you can do Camino from Lisbon. And I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. And so I was like, fine, I'm just going to do Camino. So I started looking into it. And literally in the 15-minute walk to the bus, by the time I got on the bus that day to go to work, I was like, I bet I can like get to Fatima, because I had wanted to go to Fatima after my Camino in 2023, but because of time I didn't get to. Hadn't even heard about Fatima until I met my Camino Hermano who lives in the US. Hey, Brian, who told me about it. And I was like, yes, I need to go there. And what I didn't realize until I got to Fatima on January 13th, 2025, it would have been my dad's 77th birthday, and it was a full moon, and he passed away now almost 9 years ago. So it was so magical to walk in on his birthday and on a full moon. What I did not realize until I got to Fatima is that Fatima actually means Mary. And so there's this church in Fatima, and you probably know this, but I did not. And there's Mother Mary on the outside of it, holding her gold sacred heart. It's such a beautiful church. It's very different than Santiago, very delicate, not as imposing, and yet it's like more magical. Dare I say it? And the whole way, there was nothing but like white and pink light. There was literally hearts everywhere along the route, which totally made sense when I got to Fatima and realized she's holding the Sacred Heart in her hands. And you're probably like, how could you not know that? Because everyone says like, well, how did you not know that? I wasn't raised in religion. I am not Catholic. So no, I did not realize this. But that was my unexpected Camino. And the universe essentially made that happen when it put through that charge on my credit card for that flight that I never ended up taking to Amsterdam. I still had to fly through Amsterdam in the end because KLM, so their hub is Amsterdam, but like, whatever. You know, at the end of the day, it was a really good way to put like a type of energetic closure around what Schiphol Airport meant for me. And I had like the most magical of times. So I'm going to go through that whole thing as well in future videos to talk about what happened on that Camino versus Camino Francés. So I just want to say that the overall point of this is that no matter when you first decided or realized you were called to do Camino, whether it was like today, you know, a week ago, a year ago, 3 decades ago, even if you haven't got there yet, don't worry. You will get there when you are meant to be there. It took me 11 and a half years to set foot on Camino. And I was excited and terrified. And I cried myself to sleep the first night, like before I started, going, what have I got into? But if you're watching this, you've already been called. You've already been called to Camino. You know, even if you've done it and you're watching this, you've probably been called for another one. Yeah. So anyways, that's my story of how I ended up on 2 Caminos. And I've got the third one coming, God willing, Camino willing. And that one, yes, I will tell you more about that closer too, because that is also tied in with my Camino in 2023. Like, there are no coincidences. So, my life is forever changed, as I've said. If you've done a Camino, I'm sure you already are aware of how life-changing it can be. And if you haven't gone on yours yet, I cannot wait for you to experience everything the Camino has waiting for you. You will not regret it. You will not regret it. Whether you're there for 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, whatever, you will not regret it. So until next time, my fellow peregrinas, peregrinos, have fun and keep planning, keep training, and most of all, buen camino.